Welcome, Binge Watchers, where we talk about the stories and characters we love and the shows they live in. My name is Ron, and let's talk about Season 1 of American Gods. To put it as simply as I can, American Gods tells the story of a man called Shadow who gets released from prison after his wife dies in a car accident. And he gets involved in the very strange world of gods and the conflicts between them. He's hired by the mysterious Mr. Wednesday, and he accompanies him as we learn more about the gods and their stories. I'm a big fan of the book, and I think that this show is a very different experience for people who've read it and people who haven't. I'll do my best in this video not to be the worst, because, for example, I haven't read any of the Song of Ice and Fire books, and you have to admit that folks who only criticize the Game of Thrones TV show through the lens of the book, well, they can be the worst. Not always, but they can, we can, and we all know it. So a lot of things I loved about this show and a lot of things I struggled with. First of all, the Brian Fullerism. The whole aesthetic of the show is beautiful. Visually, I don't think it could have looked better. It looks so much like Hannibal that if Mads Mikkelsen just walked into a scene and just took a bite out of someone, I would not be surprised. Just like Hannibal, they sometimes take it a bit too far with the whole everything has to be in slow motion always thing, but it still looks incredibly cool and it does contribute to the overall atmosphere of the show. Just be ready to make some jokes about, like, oh, someone's gonna make a cup of coffee? Well, that's gonna be a 45-minute scene. American Gods is a story that focuses more on characters than on plot, in my opinion. And there are tons of characters in the book. And the show, while it does make some strange choices that I'll get to, overall does a really good job with most of its characters. You've probably heard this a million times by now, but Ian McShane truly is the best casting I've seen lately. If you've read the book, you'll probably love him. If you haven't read the book, you'll probably love him. Wednesday is a fantastic character and he's captured so well on the show. Same goes for Matt Sweeney, who I think gets more focus in the show than he does in the book, but I loved every second of it. Ricky Whittle plays Shadow, and I think he does a really good job overall. It's a great performance on his part, and he looks the part like crazy. That's exactly how I pictured Shadow when I read the book. I just can't get away from the book, where Shadow's character feels a little bit different. So I had a hard time with book Shadow versus TV Shadow, with book Shadow being my preference. For the most part, the show is well written, even if I didn't always get why they were spending so much time on any one particular thing. The dialogue and the interactions were still interesting. I was never bored, but there were a few times where I was like, all right, let's keep it moving. The biggest issue in this season is probably pacing. This season moves incredibly slow, and they make a lot of strange choices with where to spend the time. And this is probably where I begin to be, just a little bit the worst. American Gods is a massive book. There is so much going on. And I get that they want to make like 5 seasons out of this, and I think that's great, and I can't wait for 5 seasons of American Gods. But still, with this season being only 8 episodes, the points of focus didn't always make sense for me. There are a few minor characters from the book that get much more focus in the show, and there are a few things about the mechanics of how the whole God thing works that were changed, as were the motives and reasons of some of the most important events in the story. Now, some of these changes produced really good episodes. For example, I really liked the Mad Sweeney and Laura episode. I think it's episode 7, and it goes very far from anything that happens in the book, but I thought it was one of the best episodes of the season. What I did have an issue with is that I felt that the whole thing is being dumbed down just a little bit. The important thing, the concept of gods are real if you believe in them, is mostly preserved, but that exact concept is what I feel is being watered down just a little bit in this show. But it's still there at the center of everything, and it's still a fascinating idea to explore. I just feel a slight underestimation of the audience, which you do see in a lot of adapted work. Making changes from the book or the comic is completely fine. I just feel that the change needs to serve the overall story. It needs to make sense. For example, it makes perfect sense that the show gave Laura, Shadow's wife, a much bigger role than what she gets in the book. Some of the other choices that they made, not so much. And as I said, they changed the reasons behind some of the most important events from the book. And I have to be a bit of a fanboy here and say that I did not appreciate some of those changes. It is important for me to say that I did enjoy this season. It's mostly exposition, it's mostly setup, but I am super excited to see how this moves forward. It's spectacular to watch, and the show's probably worth watching only for how good it looks, and it is probably very different from anything else you're used to. As a huge fan of the book, I'm still excited about the show after watching the first season of it, but I don't think it's great yet. I think it can get there. So bottom line, should you watch it? I would say yes. Whether you read the book or not, this first season is interesting and beautiful enough to be worth your time. There are a lot of pacing issues here. We, for example, did not need to spend half an episode playing checkers with Chernobog. The checkers game is a very important moment in the story, but I mean, it was basically the checkers episode. That's too much. That's a weird choice. I'm sure that this is an incredibly difficult source material to adapt. There is so much going on in American Gods, the book. Fans will find stuff to be unhappy about because we're the worst and we're sorry. But talking about these things is just so much fun that we're just gonna keep doing it. Anyway, what were your thoughts about American Gods? Have you read the book? Did the show make any sense to you? Are you a fan of any other Neil Gaiman novels? What is life, even? Put all your thoughts in the comments down below, take them out of your brain, and put them in the comments. If you're gonna be talking about spoilers, please use spoiler tags in your comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help out a lot, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and TV Time. But if you're finding binge watchers for the first time, welcome. I'd like to invite you to join the Binge Watchers community. Come talk about TV with us. It's a lot of fun. Subscribe to the channel. But in any case, keep binging, and I will see you next time.